Hello everyone, welcome to Christendom Rising, an occasional video magazine programme that looks at traditional Catholicism. I am your host Michelle Buscombe, standing in for Sophie Oliver. We are based at Lanherne Convent near Newquay in Cornwall. In our last programme, we looked at why traditional Catholicism is so popular with young Catholics. Bishop Athanasius Schneider gave us a video on his thoughts on why this is so. Many thanks to all who took part. Coming up in today's programme, Bishop O'Toole gave us an interview at Chiddock for the Latin Mass Society's pilgrimage there in honour of the Catholic martyrs for the Reformation. Canon Mawgan talks about the new Institute of Christ the King mission at the Church of the Holy Angels in Torquay, and the renovation of the Shrine Church of St. Peter, Paul and Philomena on the Wirral. Father Thomas Crean gives us another view on why tradition is attracting so many young people. Maurice Quinn, the Latin Mass Society rep for Devon and Dorset, gives us an update on great developments there. Stefano Mazzeo talks about the recent filming for EWTN on Dartmoor. We give an update on the renovation of Lanherne Convent. And Mrs. Josephine Ford continues her talk on bringing up a traditional Catholic family in the modern world. First, we are honoured to have our Bishop, the Right Reverend Mark O'Toole, Bishop of Plymouth, talk about the martyrs of Chiddock after the latest Latin Mass Society pilgrimage there.
I was very moved just before Mass to spend some quiet moments in the barn or the loft where Mass was celebrated in that humble place during penal times. Whilst there, I prayed especially for the soul of Sir David Annis, who, as you know, died so tragically yesterday. He was a devout Catholic, a man of great faith, who lived his faith in a very deep way, in very practical terms. So we pray especially during this Mass for the repose of his soul, for his wife and family at this time of terrible loss. Whilst I was there too, I prayed this prayer of St. Andrew before the cross. O good cross, made beautiful by the body of the Lord, long have I desired you, ardently have I loved you, unceasingly have I sought you out. And now you are ready for my eager soul. Receive me from among men and restore me to my Master, so that he who by means of you in dying redeemed me may receive me. Amen. It was with these words of St. Andrew on his lips that John Cornelius ascended the gallows, which he kissed. For it is true, the means of his execution, but it also was the cross of his martyrdom.
Oh Well, I'm delighted to be here at Our Lady and the Martyrs of Chidiock, here in the village of Chidiock. And this chapel was built on the site of the castle, which was at that time owned and run by some members of the Arundel family, who were also linked to Sir John Arundel at Lanherne. And he was a great benefactor of one of the key figures of those martyrs, Father John Cornelius, who was a boy on the Arundel estate and was sponsored by Sir John Arundel of Lanherne. And so there's always been a very strong link between the Catholic family at Lanherne and the Catholic family based here at Chidiock. And today, those two families were also united with us in the faith here, because some of the priests of the Institute of Christ the King, one of whom is a chaplain at Lanherne, came today with some of the vestments from Lanherne so that we could celebrate Mass here. And we've been very blessed to welcome another community of the Institute of Christ the King at the Shrine Church of Holy Angels in Torquay. So it's been a day of great joy and blessing for us. As we recall the example of figures like Blessed John Cornelius and the 7 other martyrs of Chidiock, we recall that they died for 2 great truths of our faith. The first is their devotion to the sacrifice of the Mass. And nowadays we need to reanimate, reinvigorate that devotion, particularly as we continue to live with the ravages of the pandemic, to encourage people to return to the practice of their faith, to come to Mass, to participate in Christ's sacrifice at Mass. And the second truth is that unity with the successor of St. Peter. It's a great feature of English Catholicism, these 2 great devotions, the devotion to the sacrifice of the Mass and the devotion and unity with the successor of St. Peter. It's always been a hallmark of English Catholics through the centuries, and we're praying that we may participate in that and deepen our love for those truths in this holy place.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now Canon Mawgan talks about the new Institute of Christ the King mission at the Church of the Holy Angels in Torquay and the renovation of the Shrine Church of Saints Peter, Paul and Philomena.
So this mission has been being prepared for a long time, about 3 years, and we've been invited by the Bishop Mark O'Toole from this Plymouth diocese to establish a shrine church dedicated to the devotion to the Blessed Sacrament, and it to be spread out to Torbay and Chelston. So this is a wonderful opportunity to grow and also to let people know the expression of our faith through the celebration of the extraordinary form of the Roman Mass. And this church, of course, is quite small, as you can see. It's smaller than all the churches of the Institute across the country, but we have already a nice and lovely and very devout nucleus of faithful. And on this day of the opening, it's just such a joy to be able to come and pray together with the new rector, Canon Scott Tanner. So the Dome of Home, that is to say the Church of St. Peter, Paul and St. Philomena in New Brighton, is still under the scaffolding. It would be cleared during the next month, in October. The work is nearly ended. The last phase is nearly completed. So we have decided, after the full restoration of the drum itself, which stands above the sanctuary, to have all the church redecorated with I have to say, a fantastic new color scheme, really Italian looking, as it would be fitting for this church. So a generous donor has decided to pay for the entire redecoration of the church, which is absolutely a wonderful news. And the diocesan authorities are thrilled with this initiative. And so now the little touch we have to do at the dome before we remove the entire scaffolding is to replace the very odd light fittings, the actual ones which are looking terrible, and most of them do not work. That was not expected. And then we have ordered 6 beautiful chandeliers which would illuminate and also decorate the nave of the dome, which is an absolute enhancement of our church, and will certainly help the faithful to come and pray and feel and sense the sacred and the grandeur of our building. On a question regarding our faithful, our congregation, once everything reopened after the lockdown or semi-lockdowns in our country during the pandemic, we reopened, and we have the great surprise to see we have doubled the size of our congregation. So I can say now it's extraordinary. So we have already we nearly have 200 people every Sunday. We've set up a young adult group because there are more young people are coming. So we've started this formation at their request last month, and I think things are growing very rapidly, I have to say. And I think once the scaffolding is ended, we would have the church consecrated by the local bishop, Bishop Mark Davis. He is really eager to do this for us, and I think that would be something to attend. Wherever you live in the UK, you must come and attend. I will let you know the news, the dates, and the place is known, but the dates when anything is ready and decided.
Thank you, Canon Mawgan. Next up, we have Father Crean giving us another view on why tradition is attracting so many young people.
Why are many young Catholics today attracted by the traditional Latin Mass? I'd say first of all that just as philosophers have defined man as a rational animal, and again as a political animal, so we can also define man as a traditional animal. And by that I mean that it's natural for us to live by means of a heritage that's come down to us through many centuries, something that's been handed down to us. Traditional just means something handed down. One obvious example of this is our language. The language that I speak is not something that I've invented. It's not something either that my parents or my grandparents invented. It's something that was formed over hundreds of years, being enriched from many different sources. So my language is a possession that in some way unites me to all the generations that preceded me, to all the people who speak that same language. Or we can take any of the arts or the sciences. It's natural for us not to have to reinvent them every generation. We receive them from those who discovered them, those who practiced them, those who perfected them in the past. We'd be obviously in a very unpleasant situation if we had to try to build houses or to heal diseases relying only on our own initiative and not on the knowledge that's been passed down from the past. And that's why I say that human beings are traditional animals. And if you think about it, the other animals are rather different. When a dog or a polar bear or a great eagle brings up its young, it's not relying on a body of knowledge that's been passed down from antiquity and gradually brought to perfection. Those animals act not by tradition, but by instinct. And even if polar bears, say, raise their cubs today in the same way as polar bears in the time of Noah, then we don't say they're carrying on a tradition. They simply possess the same instincts as their ancestors. And so man is a traditional animal. But today, human beings often feel quite deracinated, cut off from their roots. J.R.R. Tolkien, the famous author, expressed this idea of deracination very powerfully in an interview that he gave near the end of his life. Tolkien had been born in a village in the county of Warwickshire in the 1890s. And it was the same county in which William Shakespeare had grown up in the 1500s. And Tolkien said in this interview that his village had changed more in his own lifetime than it had done in the centuries between Shakespeare's birth and his own birth. Now, Tolkien, I think, was speaking especially of industrialization and all the changes that caused the flight from the land to the cities. But there are also other kinds of deracination that affect people today. There's what's called, somewhat euphemistically, the sexual revolution. When people don't grow up in stable families, they're liable to receive much less from past generations. And there's also what we can call a general lack of cultural confidence in the West today. By that I mean a reluctance to take a proper pride and pleasure in the achievements of our ancestors. So all this deracination, it seems to me, is one of the reasons, at least, why there is an increasing attraction toward the traditional Latin Mass. This Mass is above all something rooted. It binds us to the time of Christ and the Apostles. Latin is one of the three languages that was on the cross. And the ceremonial of the Mass grew up gradually over the centuries, being faithfully handed down and perfected under the inspiration, I'm sure, of the Holy Spirit. And so when we go to Mass or say Mass, we can be conscious that if one of the great English saints were to come back to earth, one of the martyrs of the Reformation, or one of the medieval mystics, or just an ordinary father or mother of a family from the time of King Alfred, then however strange they would find the rest of our world, however bewildering, in fact, they would find it, they would nevertheless be immediately at home in the Latin Mass. But though tradition is important in many areas of life, it's especially important when it comes to religion. Because as Catholics, we claim that our faith today is just the same faith as it was in the 16th century or in the Middle Ages or in the time of the Apostles. And that's why it's very fitting that the sacred liturgy, the ceremonies by which the faith is expressed and nourished, should be very stable from one generation to the next. And so if young Catholics today are being attracted to the Latin Mass, the traditional Mass, I think it's in part because they sense all that. And they find in it a strength to stand up against what Scripture calls the world, everything that threatens to cut us off from God and from the natural law, and so ultimately from happiness. And they find also that it's giving them strength when their time comes to assume the responsibilities of parents themselves. And they find that the Latin Mass is a good context in which to raise a new generation of Christians. And so in that way, they become part of a living tradition, a tradition that will continue until our Lord returns.
Gloria
And now Maurice Quinn, the Latin Mass Society rep for Devon and Dorset, gives us an update on great developments there.
I'm Maurice Quinn. I'm the Latin Mass Society rep for the Diocese of Plymouth. My area covers Dorset and Devon. First of all, I'd like to say something about what's going on in Dorset. We had a wonderful Latin Mass Society pilgrimage in honour of the Chidiock martyrs last October, and at it was present Bishop Mark O'Toole. It was a high mass celebrated by the priests of the Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest. This year, we've already narrowed down the date and nailed it to the 17th of September. So it's one for your diary, Saturday the 17th of September at Chidiock in the Church of Our Lady, Queen of Martyrs and St Ignatius. Elsewhere in Dorset, we have a Latin Mass regularly on Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. at Our Lady of Lourdes and St Cecilia at Blandford Forum. Now, in addition to this regular Saturday morning Holy Mass, there is a Mass every month on a particular day. Now, the best way to find those out is to look in the Latin Mass Society magazine, Mass of Ages, where you'll see the Mass listings, or you can go on to the Latin Mass website. The Shrine of Holy Angels in Torquay, with the prior there, Father Canon, who is actually a priest of the Institute of Christ the King, is doing very well indeed. It's the only place in Torquay where you can get every single day Holy Mass and adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, as well as, of course, regular confessions. The Canon has now introduced a session of catechetics for the adults after Holy Mass on a Sunday, and he's also introduced it for the second week, every other week, for the children. Unfortunately, because we had to close down the Mass centres at Blessed Sacrament in Exeter and at Ugbrook House at Chudley, there's been no Latin Mass there at all, but I'm hoping in the near future to get them restarted as things start to ease. We have another Mass venue in Plymouth, which is actually St Edward the Confessor in Plymouth itself. Now, there's a Holy Mass 3 o'clock every single Sunday afternoon. And for those of you who love to do the first Saturday devotions, there is a Mass there on the first Saturday of every single month at 11 or 11:30. Now, the next thing I would like to say that I forgot to mention earlier is that many of you come down to Torquay for holidays. Please remember you can get Holy Mass in the extraordinary form every single day now at Holy Angels.
And now Stefano Mazzeo talks about the recent filming for EWTN on Dartmoor and reminds traditional Catholics to get involved with the Synod on Synodality.
Just a quick update and a thank you to all the actors and crew that took part in our filming on Dartmoor at the end of November and early December for EWTN's The Message of Lourdes. A special thanks also to all who turned up as extras from local churches and further afield at Hayter Quarry, which was our Massa Biel. We did about 3.5 days filming, but had some interruptions for bad weather. Nevertheless, we got some good filming in. Here are some stills. EWTN's Christendom film will be broadcast on February 14th at 10:30 a.m. Many thanks to all who took part. Here is the opening sequence. Remember to take part in the Synod on Synodality. Make sure that tradition has a voice. See the links below where you can submit your contributions. I recently caught up with Dr. Shaw, the chairman of the Latin Mass Society, who talks about the need for us all to get involved. The Synod on Synodality, the Latin Mass Society is encouraging everyone to take part in it. Could you say something about that, please?
Yes. The Synod on Synodality is being called for next year, 2023, and on the basis of contributions by Catholics all over the world. So any Catholic anywhere in the world is invited to submit a statement, a testimony, ideas. It's very open-ended indeed. So they just want to know what people think about where the Holy Spirit is guiding the Church. I mean, itself a phrase which is capable of many interpretations. Naturally, all sorts of people are going to be putting in their pennyworth. There's an official website which provides materials for all sorts of groups, including some rather strange ones. And I think that it makes sense for the traditional Catholics attached to the traditional Mass, and indeed every other kind of Catholic, to take this reasonably seriously and send something in, not to spend a huge amount of time. Well, it's not necessary to spend a huge amount of time, just a short statement, something polite. Latin Mass Society has produced a little guide to help you through that, and the University International has turned this into 7 different languages, so you should be able to find it in somewhere on the Latin Mass Society website or the fiuv.org for University International. Have a look at what it says. There are email addresses that you can send your little statement to. You should have a rep in your parish and in your diocese. Some dioceses have produced online forms to fill in. There are many different ways of submitting it, and we encourage people to use as many of them as possible. It may be a foregone conclusion. They may be chucking out views that they don't like, but we make ignoring us inevitable if we don't make our contribution.
Good point. Can you send in more than one submission then, if there's various places to send it?
Oh yes, certainly. I think that you can send it for example, at the parish level and at the diocesan level and directly to the synod organisers in Rome. And if you're concerned that it's not going to get passed up the chain of command, if you send it to the parish, it won't be passed to the diocese, for example, then that would be the thing to do. It's obviously particularly important for traditional Catholics to make their voices heard at this synod in light of the Holy Father's Traditionis Custodes and the other documents which may or may not be coming out. The Traditionis Custodes seems to be based on a understanding of traditional Catholics which doesn't really correspond to what I'd call the reality in the typical congregation. It may correspond to something. You can find voices associated with the traditional Mass on social media and in funny corners of the world, which are saying the kinds of things that Pope Francis says that we say, but that's far from typical. And I think that one thing that the sane people can, the normal people can do, the Catholics attached to the traditional Mass, is to make this opportunity to drown out the extremist, the angry, the peculiar, the sedevacantist, and all those sorts of things, which are not at all typical. I think it's very unjust and it's very unfortunate. The Pope has been fed this information that, we're all completely crazy, and the things he attributes to us just aren't the things that one hears, over a cup of tea after the traditional Mass, in really anywhere where I've been to it, within the context of Latin Mass Society or the traditional institutes or anything like that.
And now we give an update on the renovation of Lanherne Convent.
The renovations at Lanherne are continuing, but slowly. Drawings of the chapel are being drafted for the necessary approvals. St. Joseph's Hall is awaiting planning permission before works can begin. Mass times at Lanherne are 8:30 and 10 a.m. on Sundays, from Monday to Saturday at 8 a.m. and on Thursdays at 6:15 p.m. Many thanks.
Lastly, Mrs. Josephine Ford continues her talk on bringing up a traditional Catholic family in the modern world. Now we have our regular feature with Mrs. Josephine Ford, and we're here to talk about traditional Catholic family values. Thank you for being here today, Josephine.
It's lovely to be here.
We're going to talk a bit about openness to life today. You're a young mother of 5 children, so how has your experience been with being open to life?
Well, I've been very blessed. As a fairly young mother still, I have 5 children, and we have many people. I've had a few people saying, "Are you going to have any more?" And I say, "Well, I'm always open to more.
Yeah.
I try to follow God's will, not my will."
Mm-hmm.
So, as a Catholic, that's what we should try and do. However, I appreciate that people have difficulties in being able to have children, which can also, I guess that's also part of being open to life. Sometimes God gives, sometimes God takes.
Yeah.
So we, I have had the misfortune of having a miscarriage too, and that was a real suffering, because we were willing to accept that little one, and then I would say, well, no, I'm going to have them. So, thankfully with our faith, I can accept that as God's will, as hard as it is to go through that. But I was speaking to a mother only the other day who said that she also had many miscarriages, and people have said to her, well, maybe that's God saying, maybe that's enough for you. And she said, well, no, we'll have more if it's God's will.
So each child is a blessing.
Yeah, they really are. I also had an experience with some midwives after my 5th child, having just recovering after having them. One midwife saw me, and she said that she was one of 4, and how lovely it was that we've got number 5. And she said, will you be having any more soon? I said, well, we're always open to life. And she said, oh, I hope to see you here soon. Oh, that's really lovely. And then the midwife next to her said, well, is this your first? I said, no, this is our 5th. She said, oh, I hope we'll see you later than that. Well, I really appreciate what that first midwife said. She respected our beliefs and our values, and I really appreciated that. I thought, I'm sure God will really bless her for what she said.
You get many different reactions.
Yes, definitely, even from the family.
Of course.
I had many worries when I had my first 2. What are people going to say? I'm accepting my 3rd. What are people going to say about it? And then I have to push those aside. You have to battle. It's a real temptation to think 2 or 3 is enough. That's enough now. What are people going to think if I have more? However, you have to battle against those temptations and say, and to tell them, well, hang on, I'm here because God has put me here. If I start to control my life, then that's not asking God to guide you. You're trying to do your will rather than God's will. Yeah, so
You've been blessed to come from a large family. I guess that's helped in supporting you.
it really has, yeah. And I know my mum told me a story, because I'm one of 12, and my mum told me a story that when she had number 6, she was told by professionals that it would be dangerous for her to have more children.
Yeah.
And well, I'm not 10, so if she had listened to them, then I wouldn't be here. So it's a blessing that she realised God's will for her.
Well, I just had my first baby, and I mean, that was number 1. Everyone was excited, but straight away after having a baby, I was met with, "Oh, you should go on contraception." And I thought, well, I've only had 1 baby. I mean, surely you've had that probably after having 5.
Yeah.
Have you been met with being asked, "Are you on contraception? Or should you not go on contraception now?"
Straight after each one of them, and they would give me a leaflet, and I would say, "Well, no, thank you," and I'd give that one back.
Yeah.
I couldn't take it home with me.
No.
I just say, "Well, no, I can't do that."
Mm-hmm.
So here you go.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm sure you're met with, it's difficult to stand up sometimes for what you believe in.
It can be,
Especially when no one else understands.
Yeah, well, thankfully, coming from a Catholic family, there's obviously many in the family that do understand. However, there are those who around me that don't, and I often wonder what they're thinking. But I just pray that I can be a good example. I'm very weak with it. I mean, I fall many a time, but we can keep trying. But they are real blessings.
I guess it's showing people that you're happy with having more children too.
Yes.
Because sometimes I've met people who think that who have this idea that as Catholics we're forced into having, like especially as women, that we're forced to have children.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, I'm happy with any life that I'm giving.
Yeah. And we're given free will too to follow to follow God's will. We can choose to follow that or not. And as Catholics, we know that it's a teaching the Church to be open to children. It's part of our marriage vows.
It's a participation in God's act of giving life.
Yes.
We get to actually partake in that, which is it's beautiful.
And also He can give and take those little lives when He wills. Some you might see to grow up older than you are now, and then others you might lose them while they're very little. I remember reading The Story of a Life by about the story of St. Therese and her family, and how her mother also had to battle with these things, and people saying, "Well, no, you keep losing them. Well, why don't you understand that surely that's God saying that's enough for you?" And she wouldn't give in.
No.
So what a lovely example. They brought saints, brought up saints, and you never know if you're saying yes to God and having another one, then they could be a saint one day. You'd have a saint in your family.
Have you felt that the dynamic has changed with every new life, every new child brings a different dynamic to the family?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have you have those tricky moments, and then you have those really loving moments, and they're all different characters. And each one you think, well, if I hadn't said yes to them, I wouldn't have this character in the house. Particularly my number 5, and they're all lovely at every age and stage. There's always something lovely about them, as much as there's always a trial to go with it. However, my little one at the minute, I just said, I love, he's 3, and he is at a really lovely age, and I keep thinking, oh, my little one. Just that character. I thought, if we'd said no to having more, I wouldn't have that little one that would come for cuddles. It would be so sweet in how he says things, and they all have their little ways in their speech and everything. And this our particular little one, he has quite a way with words, just a real innocent way, and it's just so sweet. And you feel, oh, it's just so lovely.
So you homeschool?
Yes.
You homeschool. How's that with a large family?
Yeah, I'm often my eldest now is. It's going well, and my eldest is now in year 6 in school terms, and so I've had many people now coming to me saying, what are you going to do for secondary school?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, I've got a 3-year-old coming up to starting their schooling, I've got a 10-year-old in year 6, so how am I going to deal with a little one and if I'm going up into secondary school? I said, well, no, we have to take it one day at a time. I hope to be able to school them through that. We will take it as it comes and bear the trials that we'll have to bear, no doubt. It wouldn't, the thought of homeschooling them and having more children would not put me off. I see a great, there's a real love between them, as much as they can have their little, like I call them sibling quibblings, little trials between them. I've had many a day where one of them's been struggling with their work and my older one has come and helped them with their work. And sometimes he'll deal with it better than I do. And it's quite funny to see. So actually having an older one around can actually help teach the younger ones. In fact, I had a family member say a little while ago that how my youngest is learning so quickly, and she realised, she said, I think it's because he's been watching the older ones, and so he's learning because he's watching the older ones learn. So he's I'm not pushing him, but he's just learning because he sees me teaching and listens in and takes it all on. So in some cases it can be a bonus. Not every child is like that and willing to learn and that. So my fourth child, Christopher, he's 5, and he wasn't quite like that. Even though I was teaching the other 3, he didn't always take on everything that they were learning. He was quite happy playing. So when it came to him starting school work at his proper age, then I felt like I was starting from the beginning. However, I can already see with my 3-year-old, I'm not going to need to do that. He's already got the basics. So it's a real blessing, and it wouldn't put me off having more. I try and be open to what God wills for us, so who knows?
Do you know many other large families around?
I know a few around, yes, and we're also in touch, and sometimes our children are like pen pals with some Catholic families up country, so they get to write a letter here and there to those families, so we keep in touch that way with Catholic families, it's really lovely.
That's a great
to have that support.
To know that you're not the only one.
It's really lovely.
That's good for your children to have, Catholic friends.
It really is.
They can talk about the truths of the Catholic faith about them naturally. And not be worried about what they're going to say or disagree with them.
No, it's really lovely for them to have like that friend, that Catholic friendship with other children.
Okay, well, thank you for being here today with us, Josephine.
That's all right.
That's it for today, and we'll be back next time. Thank you, Josephine. In the next episode, we hope to bring you news of exciting events in the traditional Catholic world. That's all for now. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to this channel. So until next time, this is Michelle Buscombe for Christendom Rising. Bye for now.